Good morning. Thank y'all for joining us. We're especially excited to have so many of our students from around the state. Certainly, as we're introducing this legislation, we are really glad to have you, not just in the room, but around the Capitol today and bringing some energy that is much needed on a very rainy, dreary day. I also want to thank President Hester, Senator Davis, and Representatives Underwood and Puryear for leading the pieces of legislation that we are announcing today. I also want to give a big thank you to our Secretary of Agriculture, Wes Ward, and DF&A Secretary Jim Hudson, who have played a big role in crafting both of these pieces of legislation. I'd also like to thank our other legislators and advocates in the room for taking time to be here and celebrate and help us get this legislation moved through. Today we are announcing two major pieces of legislation that will address the cost and availability of food here in the state of Arkansas. The Grocery Tax Relief Act to finally repeal our state grocery tax, and the Good Neighbor Act to expand liability protection for food bank donors. Arkansas has a lot of economic statistics to be proud of. We're #1 in economic growth at the end of last year, #1 for inbound movers, and #1 for the lowest cost of living. But that doesn't mean that we don't have Arkansans that are struggling. Under the Biden administration, prices rose more than 20%. And for everyday items, the increase was often a lot bigger than that. For too many families, the grocery bill went up while their paychecks stayed the same. And for those families at the bottom of the income ladder, that means missed meals and empty dinner tables. My administration has worked to help those families make ends meet. We just became the first state in the South to give free breakfast to every one of our students. And last year, I signed Arkansas up for the summer EBT program, which gives $120 to low-income families during the summer months to help kids who would normally eat lunch for free during the school year. We've partnered with groups like the Hunger Relief Alliance and served more than 250,000 kids just in a short amount of time. That amount, $120 over the summer, can be life-changing for Arkansas families. That's why this session we're getting rid of Arkansas's most regressive tax and giving a helping hand to Arkansans who need it the most. Thankfully, government isn't the only one giving a helping hand. I'm glad to say we live in one of the most generous states in America, and our food banks help so many families around our state make ends meet. I've visited and partnered with some of our largest food banks, and we want to remove barriers from people that are just trying to help one another. That's why we will pass the Good Neighbor Act and expand liability protections to food bank donors, including churches, restaurants, farmers, grocery stores, and wholesalers. And we will expand protections for the food banks themselves so they don't have to wade through red tape when they're simply trying to serve their fellow neighbors. These bills are the definition of common sense conservatism, giving Arkansans a hand up, not a handout, to help break the cycles of poverty and dependency. Again, I appreciate the legislators who are championing these bills for their hard work to support Arkansas families. I'll now invite them up to speak a little bit about the legislation, and then we'll come back to take some questions. Thank you again for being here, and thank you for helping us take care of every single Arkansan all across the state. Thank y'all. And Representative Underwood, I'll turn it over to you.
Well, I want to thank Governor Sanders for leading on this issue, and I also want to thank Senator Hester for also sponsoring this legislation, and all my colleagues in the room that will help us get this across the finish line. I'm honored to stand with Governor Sanders today to finally eliminate the state grocery tax in Arkansas. For the past several years, Arkansans have suffered from historic inflation and rising costs, especially on food and groceries. And little matters more to parents than providing for their families and putting food on the table. And that's why the Republican majority has focused on lowering income tax, keeping more money in Arkansans' wallets, and making sure their dollar goes as far as possible. And while we're blessed to live in a state with a low cost of living, I recently read a study that Arkansas ranks 3rd in the percentage of income spent on groceries. We hear from our constituents every day that they spend more at the store, but they're getting less. Now, this bill may not be a silver bullet. It may not solve all the problems, but what it does say is that we hear you, we understand the challenges that you're facing, and we're here to address the issues. Governor Sanders and this legislature have cut income taxes, they provided relief for property taxes, and now Arkansans will pay less for groceries too. And we're committed to lowering the tax burden for people of Arkansas. Thank you so much. Thank you, Governor. And Representative Perrier is up next.
All right, thank you, guys. We have some great organizations across this state that are working hard to address food insecurities. The Good Neighbor Act encourages more donors to participate by addressing liability barriers. Anything we can do to encourage good faith donors is a win, and I appreciate Governor Sanders for her support in making this a priority. Thank you.
We'll take a couple questions, if there are any.
How's this getting done through legislation instead of through the constitutional amendment? I don't know if any of the sponsors are going to, when it comes to the continuing groceries.
Sure, happy to let them jump in. I think anytime we have an opportunity to provide relief for Arkansas families while we're in the midst of a session, we should do it. It's the reason we've worked so closely with legislators over the last 2 years, not only on this, but in particular on cutting the state income tax 3 different times. We want to continue to look for ways, if we can, to pass that savings back onto the taxpayer, and this is one of those opportunities. I don't know if anybody has anything they want to add. No.
Could you say a little more on the Good Neighbor Acts and maybe what prompted this? Have there been concerns about liabilities that have been brought to the state?
Again, we want to remove barriers. It shouldn't be a complicated thing to try to help people out. We've seen instances over the last several years in food banks not being able to accept certain products and things from restaurants and others, and so we just want to remove those barriers and make that opportunity easier. Secretary Ward, or if anybody has anything they want to add, but ultimately it shouldn't be hard to help out your fellow citizens, and so we want to make that as easy as possible. Great. Oh, we got one more?
Yes, so with the grocery tax going away, obviously this will affect some state entities that you've kind of been a big advocate for, like the Parks and Tourism and other things. Have they been aware of the money that could be going away?
We certainly didn't surprise them. I promise we let them know. At the end of the day, the good thing is that these agencies have very healthy, strong budgets, very confident in their ability to continue to do what we've been doing, which is breaking tourism records. And that's one of the reasons that we have the ability to get rid of the grocery tax, is because our industry is growing so much, and we feel very confident they'll be able to continue not only just to provide great service, but to excel in the way that we have over the last couple years. We had over 50 million visitors to the state last year, bringing in $10 billion in economic revenue to the state. All good things. We think that'll continue to surge and continue to grow. Yes, sir.
When do we expect this to go into effect?
I think, Jim, you want to jump in on the exact timing? Obviously, we have to pass the legislation, so I'm looking at my friends in the room on how quickly they can get that done. I'll sign it as soon as it comes to my desk, but in terms of the specific timing, I'll let Jim jump in on that.
Yes, ma'am. It'll be effective January 1st, 2026. Anytime you're changing the rate of taxation or what is taxed, our merchants need to be able to reprogram their systems, and so we want to give them plenty of advance notice on that. So January 1st, 2026.
Thank you all so much. Thanks for being here today.